Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. Just have to make sure I get all that right. I was sorely tempted to say that it was 2024 for some reason, and I'm not really sure why. Anyway, it's not. So, what do you say? Let's catch up on things that are going on. Gosh, there's an awful lot. Yesterday, I decided to play a new game in the morning posts using a random country selector. It actually exists out there. I mean, there's one of everything in the world, obviously. But using a random country selector to just randomly pick a country out of, a figurative hat and essentially wait the day out and see whether Donald Trump threatens at any point to invade that country. Now, there's a lot of countries in the world, so the chances of hitting it correctly are pretty low. But on the other hand, we're now threatening to invade Greenland, Canada, Mexico, Panama, and, well, there was some threat, not an explicit invasion threat per se, made to South Africa in the last day or so, too, as well. So, but that they would come under some sort of punishment or sanctions regime because of something I heard about on the television or something. And then yesterday, golly, surprise, this one actually, I mean, this one is so crazy that it actually is kind of a surprise. Gaza. And I don't mean the Gaza in Mozambique either, which you probably didn't know there was a Gaza in Mozambique. I didn't know until midday yesterday when I found out, by the way, just, by way of straightening things out, there is one. And if we get to the story, I'll tell you why I found out that was the case. Anyway, so kind of one of the most astonishing developments, I guess, ever in anything, and really like 25th Amendment level astonishing. I really would love to know whether Benjamin Netanyahu had any idea that Trump was going to say this when they met yesterday. And that's bad enough. But they met yesterday, and then they had a joint press availability, at which, I don't know, I assume Netanyahu said something. I didn't see any film of that. The only film I saw circulating was Trump standing there. They have the separate podiums. They got the two flags out, and Trump makes a statement, and Netanyahu stands there and looks politely. And Trump, of course, gives him permission to do whatever he wants in Gaza, more or less. But then sort of blurts out, not only does he, in fact, support the idea of cleaning out the whole place, ethnically, but not cleansing it per se, but cleaning it. But he wants to evacuate all of the Gazan population to somewhere else, somewhere unknown. I mean, he has said, I would like Egypt to take them. I would like Jordan to take some. I mean, people have been asking that for 70 years, but no. But then he goes on to say, well, we're going to clean the whole thing out, and the U.S. will take over. The United States will own Gaza. Own Gaza. And I was looking for a reaction from Netanyahu, and I think there's a delayed one. I don't know whether he's a fluent English speaker. He clearly heard it in the moment. But it looked like it might have taken a few seconds to hit him, almost as if he was waiting for the translation to be sure of what was said. And he kind of, does kind of give a look out to the audience like, but he doesn't say, what? No. No, you're not going to own it. What are you talking about? No. That, or even some sort of, I mean, I didn't see the film of him speaking, and it may be at some later point he said, well, the details are going to be worked out. You got to be careful with a guy like Trump. But, yeah, well, that was a weirdo surprise. Oh, hello. And, and they're asking for clarification. Are you saying we would actually commit ground troops to this? Yeah, we're looking at that. We're looking at that very strongly. And then, of course, the whole plan. So we're going to level it out. I thought that was interesting, too. We're going to level Gaza. You're not supposed to say that like, hey, everybody. But we're going to level. But then he says, level it out, make it all nice and smooth so that we can build hotels and beautiful housing. And it was an amazing thing to say, just in terms of, well, that's crazy. No human ever says that. And there it was. We're going to make it beautiful and very vague on all the things like what happens to 2 million Palestinians who live there. But what does he care? He just thinks, I don't know, they'll just go to Egypt or Jordan or both, and we'll smooth it out and we'll make beautiful, beautiful buildings, and they'll love it. It'll be great for them. And then he gets really vague. We're going to put up all these beautiful buildings, and we're going to create jobs and housing for all the people of the area. I'm immediately thinking of that goose chasing the guy down the street meme of, what people, what area, MFer, what are you talking about? I guess it comes as no surprise. People have rumored for a long time that Jared Kushner has been interested in developing the waterfront property of Gaza. And I guess I don't know. I guess I thought that if anything, they would give a blank slate to Israel and we'll see what happens. And if it turns out that everybody here has been murdered, then we will build some hotels on top of it, and they won't fall into the ground like building on Indian burial grounds at Poltergeist, because we're better than that. We're different and very orange. I don't know what the plan was, but now it turns out we'll get rid of everybody, and we'll own it. And won't that be a surprise to the Israelis? Well, I don't know what their reaction to that was, because I passed out. I saw that I passed out. I woke up and it was Wednesday, and Greg Dworkin was on the phone. So here he is. Good morning, Greg. How are you, and how many foreign wars do you think we'll be in today?
Hi. So I was just reading the plot of Superman the movie from 1978.
Oh.
Lex Luthor reveals his true plans for the stolen missiles. The first will destroy the San Andreas Fault, which will collapse the western coastline of the U.S., California, into the ocean, making the seemingly worthless desert of the West into multi-billion-dollar windfalls. So apparently Trump thinks that this is a documentary, and that's his approach to Gaza. He wants beachfront property. He wants Jared to, invest. I know how to develop this kind of thing, and it's astounding. But people were talking about this in 2017 when he said it.
Yeah.
And he's saying it now.
Yes.
Out loud.
And it was, I guess everybody thought, he's crazy. He says dumb things. Although in 2017, we looked like we would be stuck with him for president for a while. And everybody just sort of dismissed it. And I knew it was coming back, but I didn't know it was in the middle of a press conference
out loud. Here's the New York Times with their top story, which I don't think should be the top story. We'll get to that.
Oh.
With Gaza takeover plan, an unbound Trump pushes an improbable idea.
Yeah.
World officials reject Trump's Gaza takeover proposal. Trump proposes U.S. takeover of Gaza and says all Palestinians should leave.
Yeah.
Trump's Gaza plan is unworkable, analysts say. Does he really mean it? I mean, this is the stupid stuff that he says that truly distracts people from the real story, which is underneath it.
Okay.
Trump brazenly defies laws and escalating executive power grab.
That
is story number one. And every media outlet should be running that, not what Trump said about Gaza, which he's saying so that you won't cover Trump brazenly defies laws and escalating executive power grab as story number one, which it is.
If the Gaza Times, if there was one, wanted to run that as the top story, that would be okay.
Or let me put it a different way. That would be a
local story.
I don't care what he says. I want to know what he does.
Oh, well,
and what he does is the main story.
Yes, certainly for us, we should have been looking. And there was certainly a lot more attention on it than there has been. Certainly still insufficient, and that's a huge problem. But I did see that Charlie Savage is on the job.
Yeah. He's the one that wrote Trump brazenly defies laws and escalating executive power grab.
I think he kind of
really
insisted on a strong headline for that one. I have a feeling he weighed in on that.
Yep.
Okay.
Or at least he
got lucky.
Whoever was rewriting it to not rewrite it this time.
Trump, unique approach to governance or something like that. Okay. Well, so what did happen? What is he doing?
Oh, well.
I don't know.
Basically,
you don't know.
As someone put it, there is no defense from a malicious insider. So what he's done is he's taking Elon Musk, who was not elected to anything,
not really an insider,
and said, you could run the government. You can break into anywhere. You can steal money. You can do whatever you want. I'm not doing a thing about it.
Yeah. And it turns
That's
out,
what's going on.
Yeah, apparently if you, someone put it today, based on news reports, if you have maybe a suit or at least a jacket and a lanyard and enough attitude, apparently you can tell security guards at any government installation, I work for Elon, get out of my way, and they'll do it.
Yeah.
They've been doing it. I'd like to try this at an army base.
Right. The way Charlie Savage put it is that other presidents have occasionally ignored a claimed right to bypass particular statutes. Trump has opened the throttle on defying legal limits. We are well past euphemism about pushing the limits, stretching the envelope and the like, said Peter Shane, who's a legal scholar and resident at NYU, and author of a casebook on separation of powers law. The array of legal constraints Mr. Trump has violated, Mr. Shane added, amounts to programmatic sabotage and rampant lawlessness. In other words, Elon Musk.
Okay. Yeah, that.
Now, here's an interesting side bit, and I think this is worth discussing. This is Congressman Jared Golden.
Oh.
Not our favorite Democrat.
No.
He covers
Golden,
a rural area in Maine.
It's terrific. Yes.
He's often, how shall I put it, Cinemansion-like in comments, although his voting record is pretty good.
Oh.
But the important thing about him,
yes,
he's a bellwether.
Oh.
He talks to his rural constituents, and what he says and how he acts is a pretty good clue as to what people are feeling in those areas.
How does he get there from here?
He gets elected.
Oh, okay.
That's my point.
I thought you couldn't. Oh, all right. Well, at any rate.
Yeah, you can't get there from here? Yeah, you can. Just get elected.
I guess you can do anything once you're elected in this country.
Right.
Trump proves it.
With the special, way of voting so that your second choice gets counted.
Yeah.
Second choice voting got him there.
Okay.
That's how you get there. So here's what he posted.
Yes.
Okay, last night. I've been getting a lot of calls over the past few days, and the interesting thing is none of them are about Donald Trump. They're all about Elon Musk. My constituents and a majority of this country put Trump in the White House, not this unelected weirdo billionaire.
Well, I like the language.
But that's the approach.
Yes.
Okay. Trump at the moment is president. Trump at the moment, has his 100-day popularity. Not terribly popular, but not terribly unpopular. Difficult for media to go after him in any way, even though Charlie Savage is showing the way as to how you're supposed to do it. Yeah. That is to say, just tell the truth and they'll think it's hell. But what he's saying is, you want to get him, you don't have to get him on murder. Get him on tax evasion.
Yeah. All right.
Go after Elon Musk. Well, Elon Musk is not popular. Everybody hates Elon Musk. This is a no-brainer. This is a winner. Do it.
He has
and by the way,
boys, but
he's the one who's initiating the lawlessness. Or, if you want to look at it another way, if you want to go after a crime syndicate, you start with the small fish and then you work your way up.
I guess
Get
so.
Musk first.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the small fish have to be charged in juvenile court.
Yeah.
As it turns out. What a brilliant plan that was, to surround yourself with kids who couldn't be charged as adults.
Right. Well, probably Matt Gaetz' idea.
Oh, yeah, likely, although he was the one that we were trying to charge. It doesn't work that way, Matt. Assaulting kids doesn't mean you get tried in juvenile court.
But he is a bellwether, and, that's basically what's going on. And, again, I think that's really the top story. This is Jamel Boyd writing in the New York Times.
Yes, that's what he does for a living.
Title of his piece is There's No Going Back.
Right.
Even if anyone had elected Elon Musk to anything, the last week would still be one of the most serious examples of executive branch malfeasance in American history. Musk has seized hold of critical leverage. Notice Musk is the focus of the story.
Yeah, that's nice.
As is appropriate. Musk is the one doing the things. Trump is just the one saying things.
Yeah, and a funny voice with weird lips.
Yeah, Musk has seized hold of critical levers of power, as they say in the East Coast.
Oh.
And authority within the federal government, apparently enabling him to destroy federal agencies at will, barring congressional action or judicial pushback. There were already at least 3 suits that I saw, because that's what I was talking about on Monday. How come there's no suits? Well, there's already 3. and they're from the unions representing the people who were being furloughed or put on administrative leave.
They needed to write the suits down over the weekend.
Yeah, and another thing about over the weekend, I think you pointed this out on Monday, and if you didn't, you meant to, is that you can't file this stuff on the weekend.
Yeah, right. You need the weekend to write it. The weekend was when it was happening. This is a pretty quick response.
You can't file it till Monday when the courthouse
is open.
That's true,
right. So, if you finish on Sunday, put your feet up.
But, point being, you can't complain on Saturday they're not doing anything.
That's true. We
you
live
have to wait
in
till
the
Monday
24/7
before you say they're not doing anything.
Yeah, it's a 24/7 news cycle, and social media makes it. I don't know how you break it down any further, but the news cycle is 15 seconds now. So it felt like people weren't doing anything.
The court doesn't open until Monday morning.
Yeah, we'll break into the court. All right.
Musk team, which includes a small gaggle of young aides, ages 19 to 24, have taken control of the Office of Personnel Management and the GSA. They've also had access to the Treasury Department. By his own account, Musk could use his access to the payment system to effect a kind of personal line item veto. If Musk doesn't believe a program or grant is effective, then he'll cancel its funding. The first casualty we know of is USAID. Next, he's going after the Department of Education, by the way. But that's the situation, writes Jamel Bowie, a power-mad president possessed of radical theories of executive authority and convinced of his own royal prerogative, has given de facto control of most of the federal government to one of the richest men on the planet, whose own interests are tangled up in those of rival governments and foreign autocracies as well as the U.S. And the public has no guarantee that its most sensitive data is secure. At best, they have the personal word of Donald Trump, which paired with a few dollars might buy you a cup of coffee.
That was before the Colombian tariffs, which
exactly right. That's why I said might.
Yeah.
The only institution capable of responding to this is Congress, and Congress is led by Republicans.
Oh, yeah, right.
So forget
those guys.
Somewhere King Charles I is very jealous.
Well, there's a lot of things sparked by that. The image that came to mind as you were talking about the kids ages 19 to 24 who, as I say, who took over the OPM office. I was thinking about, hey, that sounds like a student protest, like if they took over the administrative building on campus to protest for, you name it, and against the Vietnam War, protesting the Israeli war in Gaza, what have you. They go in there and they hit them over the head, I think, and then take them out of there, and then make it illegal to do that. But not this time.
Well, as Bowie writes, at this point, and again, I was around for the Vietnam protests.
Yeah.
What good did they do? I really don't know. They got the Democrats unelected. I don't know how that was helpful.
Well, there was that. I'm just saying that it used to be when America was great, we
used to beat up
those kids on the ears. Yeah.
But Bowie writes, at this point in any argument like this, when the question arises of what should be done and what can be done, and the sad answer is not much. Those with the direct institutional power to slam the brakes lack the will, that is to say the Republicans in Congress, and those with the will lack the power, that is to say the Democrats in Congress.
Yes.
If Trump and Musk's opponents have a tool to use, it's the power to shape public opinion, and it is to the advantage of those opponents that Trump and Musk's efforts to commandeer the executive branch are taking shape side by side with serious accidents that dramatize the importance of a competent apolitical civil service. So that's why the DEI comment about the crash was such a BFD. It's not that he was slandering people. It's that he's pointing out that you don't really need the government to do things like, watch air traffic. It's like,
why direct
what's
things?
The worst thing that could happen?
Yeah, that already happened. So what's the problem? Keep going.
Trump, excuse me.
Oh, yes.
Trump may have lied about the influence of the far right on his plans, but it's clear as voters didn't anticipate anything other than a return to the status quo before the pandemic. What they're getting instead is a new crisis pushed on by a dangerous set of corrupt oligarchs and monomaniacal ideologues. As dangerous as the president and his allies are, their hold on government is not as total or complete as they imagine. The opponents, in other words, still have room to maneuver, but it's vital that they see the important truth and that there's no going back to the status quo ante. Trump and Musk really have altered the structure of things. And so the president's opponents cannot expect the return to the Constitution as it was, whatever comes next, will need to be a fundamental rethinking of what the system is and what we want out of it. Anything less will set us up for yet another Trump and yet another Musk. But Musk being in the middle of this, he starts the piece out with it. The other piece talks about it.
Yep.
Musk absolutely positively has to be the focus. Musk has to be the focus of the lawsuits. The Supreme Court didn't say anything about Musk having no responsibilities and has complete total immunity. Musk has to be the focus.
Yeah, and I guess they're starting to attempt on the Trump administration side to try to clear up what is he, who is he, what kind of authority has he got, and they settled on something that they thought they could hang around his neck and satisfy everybody by calling him a special government employee, which actually sounds made up, but is not. But there's actual rules about that. Not that they're obeying any of the rules, but it does not describe in any way, shape, or form the kind of work that he's doing. But that's what basically they were saying. This is why he's allowed to do things, even though I didn't appoint him to anything or submit his name to anybody or sign any piece of paper or anything like that. So that's the excuse. I don't know that that's the way you actually get into those jobs. That's something I'm still trying to find out, but it wouldn't matter. And I'm not spending a great deal of time on it because we got bigger problems than that, but it might be nice to know along the way. Something you could tell a court eventually when they open on Monday, and you can tell them he's not been appointed this way. He does not have that authority. Let's undo the things he did. And, in their own sweet time, they may decide to do that. So we'll take it if they do.
Anyway,
it's one avenue.
I thought a lot of that was a big deal. Oh, yeah, by the way, Trump said stuff about Gaza, which is really stupid and dangerous. But, that's
let's not go there.
Story number 2. It's not story number 1.
Not that we shouldn't discuss the story. Let's not go to Gaza. That's my advice. But just let everybody know. He says troops on the ground in Gaza, not off the table. So if you got any children to spare, sign them up, everybody. And I recommend against it. The Palestinians who live in Gaza apparently quite attached to the area and probably no more willing to move for the United States than they were for Israel.
What does FAFO stand for? We asked the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, and other Michigan voters.
Did we ask them that?
We should.
Many people should be asked that. And we should also just point out that a lot of people were very angry and very upset, and then at the last minute said, all right, fine. And okay, you did, if you voted to save yourself from this, great, congratulations. I might have hoped for some more vocal turnabout, but then if you were the type of person who tweeted, as is now being shared, plenty of tweets being shared from Election Day of people saying, ha, that's what you get. And, that's not good.
So Sarah Smith has this
but it is not
on Blue Sky.
Hope. Yeah.
But I'm going to read you just the addendum.
All right.
Taxonomy of news organizations. 1. Some newsrooms report that the sky is blue based on going outside and seeing that it's blue. 2. Some newsrooms report that several people are alleging the sky could possibly be showing signs of a light blue hue.
Okay.
3. Some newsrooms don't look at sky.
Yes. Don't look up.
So there you have it. Times obviously is number 2. Everybody should be number 1. And Fox is number 3.
Yeah, right. Although there are other, I guess probably another category of people who just confidently report that it's red.
Right.
So,
she points out that the many newsrooms with few journalists in them at this point simply doesn't have and doesn't care to rebuild the infrastructure to meet this moment, even if the reporters wanted to, like Charlie Savage.
Yeah.
Just not there. And the people who run the place think it's just fine. I used to work for a hospital. Hospital went corporate because everything does. I get out at that point where it was really shifting from, physicians take care of patients
very
to
shifty.
How much money do we make? And, it's very difficult when the people who are in charge are beholden to the shareholders, whoever they are, even in nonprofits or the board. and simply don't care about whether or not care is being delivered. And, the newsrooms want to stay afloat and simply don't care about whether or not news is being given through their vehicle, through their platform to people, or they simply don't even care if they stay viable, like the LA Times.
Yeah, well,
which really at this point isn't a newspaper anymore.
There are,
because the owner of the LA Times rewrites the articles and rewrites the headlines to mean the opposite of what the person who contributed said.
Yes, I heard about that over the weekend.
Yeah, it happened.
And somebody had to republish their
Somebody was
essay
critical of RFK,
elsewhere.
and the owner rewrote it as, I endorse RFK.
That seems like they really went too far afield on that one.
See, he's wonderful. Even our op-ed people say so.
Yeah, great. It used to be that newspapers, I guess, were frequently run by people who were journalists and loved journalism. They may not have been the best business people necessarily, but they kind of, work their way up to it or start their own newspaper because they need their own outlet. And now it's just kind of a commodity. It's bought by venture capitalists who see some money to be squeezed out of it. What's the product again? Hamburgers? No, it's a newspaper. Oh, well, all right, to hell with that. Let's see how we can squeeze the money out of it. Just like anything else, and I guess that happened here. Sometimes they like the prestige that goes with saying, I'm the publisher of a newspaper. I'm killing it. But while I'm doing it, I'm very prestigious. Yeah, very sad. Okay, we'll come back here. Look at the corporate forces are forcing us off the air for 2 minutes for a commercial, which we don't even have. It's a commercial for me. What a weird business model we have here. Well, we just need to take a break, get some water. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, beliefs, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everybody could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together. And by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com. Secure, recurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show in the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. How did you like that break? I loved it. It was terrific. Now I'm recharged to tell you about the collapse of your government.
Broken.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Who am I kidding?
Who are you kidding?
Give up. Yes.
Okay,
What's
so
next?
This is Joyce Vance writing
Joyce.
on civil discourse because she's a very civil person.
Right.
And cares
Sound
about
like Greg.
civil issues and civilization and civics even.
Oh.
So Civil Discourse with
Hondas.
Joyce Vance writes, is it really a coup? And I'll skip the whole article and say yes. So coup is the correct way to label the transformation she describes what's going on.
All right,
But
why
we already
not?
know what's going on.
I don't
We
need
are
the
living through,
semantics.
but with so much continuing normally, it's easy to doubt what you're seeing, even experiencing it from the perspective of historians who understand this moment through the lens of history. It doesn't seem real. Reporter Garrett Graff wrote a piece titled Musk's Junta Establishes Him as Head of Government that he pitched as imagining how he'd cover overseas what's happening to the U.S. right now.
We read that one.
Yeah.
It was good.
It was great. He started out, I've long believed American media would be more clear-eyed about the rise and return of Donald Trump if it was happening overseas in a foreign country. Why damage the American experiment as we near the celebration of his 250th anniversary? Connecticut Democrat Chris Murphy had some thoughts about that as he joined his colleagues outside USAID closed offices on Monday. Democrats are doing what they're doing. They actually did cover that on the news, got big coverage in Connecticut, suggesting this was not but it got coverage on national news too, suggesting this was not the time to pull punches. He called it a move to benefit the oligarchs. Musk makes billions of dollars based off his business with China, and call it what it is. Sunday night, I called it a coup as well, writing in exasperation that Musk and his crew of men, remember, Musk is the focus here. Musk is the center. Musk and his crew of men,
Maybe that's
barely
why it's
out of their teens, haven't taken a note to serve, and they're not accountable to the public. But long-term success is not a foregone conclusion with coups, especially when citizens are unwilling to accept them. Already, we're seeing signs Americans have no intention of letting it happen here. It's a slow, still fragile start, but elected officials and American citizens seem to be figuring it out. There were protesters outside of the Treasury Department. Members of Congress rallied around USAID. There were big protests in the streets in L.A. over the immigration issues. I mean, there's stuff going on if our media would bother to cover it. So, this protest outside of Treasury, somebody's holding up a sign that says Stop Musk, and somebody's holding up a picture of Musk that's been used in a lot of stories about what he's doing. So Musk there is also the focus.
Yeah, good. Have you seen this man? They should have arrest posters, wanted type things. That might help.
Meanwhile,
yes,
Ryan Goodman on Blue Sky writes, this is really chilling. Thanks to Senator Mark Warner for releasing the memo from Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove.
Trust all Emils.
To FBI leadership ordering the purge. The memo is a clear abuse of power and weaponization of DOJ. The memo bolsters the FBI lawsuits filed today. Today. I'll repeat that.
How could that happen?
Very clear. The list is for retaliatory purposes. This is the memo. Memorandum for Acting Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation from U.S. Department of Justice, Office of the Deputy Attorney General. And he initials it. Subject, terminations. This memorandum sets forth a series of directives authorized by the Acting Attorney General regarding personnel matters to be addressed at the FBI. Pursuant to the Constitution and laws of the United States, you are directed to take all steps necessary to effectuate the termination of the 7 FBI employees identified below, effective 5:30 p.m. February 3rd, to the extent these employees have not retired beforehand. As President Trump declared on his first day back in office, the American people have witnessed the previous administration engage in a systematic campaign against its perceived political opponents, weaponizing the legal force of numerous federal law enforcement agencies and the intelligence community against those perceived political opponents in the form of investigations, prosecutions, civil enforcement actions, and other related actions. This includes the FBI. For example, the FBI actively participated in what President Trump appropriately described as a grave national injustice that's been perpetrated upon the American people with respect to events that occurred on January 6th. The weaponization of the FBI security clearance process is similarly troubling. I do not believe that the current leadership of the Justice Department can trust these FBI employees to assist in implementing the president's agenda faithfully. Well, yeah, they're not going to break the law. They're going to swear an oath to the Constitution, not the president. Furthermore, he writes, I deem these terminations necessary pursuant to President Trump's January 20th executive order entitled Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government.
Well, I'm glad that got ended.
So, that seems pretty clear.
Yeah.
And then he names the employees to be terminated. And for the same reasons, you were directed to take all steps necessary to effectuate the termination of another one to the extent Mr. Sundberg has not retired beforehand. All these names are out there.
Yeah.
And the Deputy Attorney General will commence a review process to determine whether any additional personnel actions are necessary. And that's why Ryan Goodman said clear abuse of power, clear retaliation. Mark Werner,
they put it on
Vice
paper.
Chair of Senate Intelligence Committee, very persuasively shows how Trump-Bove purge makes us less safe. There's some extraordinary people that we have lost, including the president fired the assistant director of the science and technology branch of the FBI, for example.
I hate science and technology. Sure.
Well, they don't want anybody checking in on what Elon Musk is doing.
No. Yeah, no one's allowed to do that. Look, they fired and they continue to pressure people to resign and or threaten to fire them, and thousands of FBI personnel are in jeopardy because they want to fire everybody who had anything to do with investigating January 6th. And as we've pointed out, that was the largest investigation in FBI history. So you're going to fire about a third of your personnel.
After he posted that, you get the usual social media response. And what does the senator plan to do about it? Which actually had a very nice answer. What would you like him to do about it? Please give details.
Okay.
And the answer made me laugh.
Yeah.
Something, something, something.
Well, I like the second one. Anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, the something suggestion, not the other, not the first something.
This is
good. And the third suggestion of something was a little far-fetched. But the second suggestion, something, sounded like it was reasonable.
Yeah. Well, you left out the most important something.
Yeah. Well,
you left out the most important hungadugga.
There's not I mean, look, the power to do this is ostensibly vested in the executive branch. They can hire and fire more or less who they want to. It's not often at will, but what they're doing, the language of the memo is, all right, I understand that there are restrictions and that we have to show cause for these firings, and the cause is cause I said so. And that's it. And and P.S. they're weaponized and and they're, in other words, they're prosecuting my boss or my friends or my people or me. So that's it. And but those are impermissible reasons. But they did put reasons on paper, and I don't know whether they don't understand that those are not valid reasons or they're just making a facial challenge to the regulations and the laws governing this stuff. Or else they're just like, I don't know, it said to put a reason, so I put one. Is that a bad one? I shouldn't have put that? Oh, why didn't someone tell me?
I saw that on Seinfeld.
Yeah, okay. Should I not have done Should I not have written it?
Should I not have done it?
Yeah. Are you putting the details of a criminal conspiracy in a memo from the Justice Department?
Speaking of memos, this is Morning Memo from TPM, Talking Points Memo.
Okay.
The most dangerous line Trump could still cross, writes David Kurtz.
There's one left.
There is.
All right.
The courts declare that
Gaza.
what Trump is doing is illegal, and Trump says, I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, yes. That's true.
That's the final cross. That is, okay, now we're a dictatorship.
Yeah. If we see it, sure. I'll be curious to see whether they do it outright or whether they try some other end around. But yeah, that would certainly be the worst one.
Right. This is in Religion News Service as a reminder that nobody is safe. And by the way, this is going to be an abbreviated pundit roundup because, there's just not that much to say. But I'll be done by around 9:45. Just giving David a heads up so he could think in his head, okay, what do I do now? This is
every minute
Religion
of the
News
show.
Service. Do not try this at home. We're complete and total professionals who plan out the show weeks in advance.
Yes. At home.
At home. Refugee aid
Don't try it in
groups
my home.
face furloughs after Trump halts program, refuses to reimburse work. Just a reminder, nobody's safe.
Yeah.
We've been unable to access federal reimbursements for critical program costs, and that includes costs that were incurred prior to the issuance of the executive order, said a spokesperson for Church World Service.
Man, does he hate church.
Faith-based groups that partner with the federal government to resettle refugees are facing widespread layoffs. Matthew Soren's vice president of advocacy and policy at World Relief, an evangelical Christian group that resettles refugees, says his organization continues to reel from several actions taken by Trump over the past 2 weeks. A method of proselytizing is to bring refugees in and orient them, so to speak. And so they really like doing this. They do well by doing good, they think to themselves. And Trump says, well, I'm going to let Musk decide. And Musk says, I don't like it. It's out. And that's where the line 9 veto idea comes in.
Yes.
The news was devastating, Soren said, because his organization typically maintains a 90-day commitment to every refugee it resettles, helping to pay for rent, basic supplies, and other resources. The sudden halt on funding meant staffers were left scrambling to figure out how to support 4,000 people the group had resettled over the past 90 days. For some, it was just another few weeks where we would be covering rent, but for some that arrived a week before, we have 3 months' worth of rent to figure out.
Yes.
Okay. Soren said his group is also impacted by Trump's executive order pausing foreign aid, which halted work World Relief does abroad in partnership with local churches through USAID. We're having to make very difficult decisions. We've been unable to access federal reimbursement. At a rally outside the White House in support of the refugee groups on Tuesday, several furloughed CWS World Service workers joined the protest. Speakers such as the Reverend Sharon Stanley Ray, the head of the national office, said more than two-thirds of its national staff have been furloughed. On Monday, Elon Musk, because he's in every story, the billionaire head of the Department of Government Efficiency and owner of the social media platform X, quoted a post from another X user detailing a grant that appeared geared toward assisting refugees abroad with their applications. Legal immigrants are typically vetted over the course of years, but Musk suggested in his post without evidence that CWS grant was part of a broader redirection of funds, billions of dollars, Musk claimed, for facilitating illegal immigration.
Teaching people how to fill out the legally required paperwork is
Jamie
illegal.
Raskin said nobody slammed the door on Elon Musk, who came from racist apartheid South Africa on an F1 student visa.
Yeah.
The State Department did not respond. In an emailed statement, the Reverend Noel Anderson, the National Field Director for CWS, said the financial woes hinder the ability to do work inspired by his faith. Now, you can't make people feel something, think something, do something, but this definitely resonates and gets out into the evangelical community in ways that Fox News telling a story does not.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, you have to see what happens. This is more FAFO. This is the FA part.
Yes, and we'll see how it shakes out. One of the things that I think is most pernicious about the granularity of the data that Trump and his team are stealing and the way they're using it is if they find out that a particular micro constituency of theirs is negatively impacted, they'll just turn the money back on and see if they shut up, and it might work.
It might.
So
we'll see.
Yep.
But,
still
again,
gotta learn
Musk
to do
is
it.
doing it, not Trump. That's Trump's response. That's not Musk's response. So, quite different. That's what happens with President Musk. He doesn't, since he wasn't elected, he's not responsive to political outcries. So this is a chart Jonathan Manhart posted. If we could show one chart to every U.S. voter each day today, I would show him this one.
Well, it's
foreign aid given a share of GDP in the G7 countries. Germany, 0.82%.
Yeah.
The average is about 0.45. UK, 0.58. France, 0.48. That's less than 1% for all of them. Japan, 0.44. France and Japan are about average. Canada, 0.38. Italy, 0.27. United States, 0.24.
Yeah.
The U.S. spends less than 1% of its GDP on foreign aid.
Mm-hmm.
This has been done. You go out and you ask the public, how much do you think we're spending on foreign aid? Oh, 38% of the budget.
Yeah.
Less than 1%. Less than a quarter of 1%.
Well, right. They don't care. It's a technocratic answer to a friend-enemy question.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, well, they'll look at it and they'll say, oh, yeah, well, I don't believe it. Okay. That's the end of the debate, I guess.
Yeah, well, what do you believe?
Right. I don't know. I believe, look up in the sky. It's the good rich blimp.
Yeah.
Zoom. All right, well.
You want conspiracy theories? I'll give you a conspiracy theory.
All right.
All right?
Yeah.
The Dallas Mavericks traded their best player.
Why does this keep coming up? Yes.
To L.A.
Yeah. What?
Okay.
Why? Yeah.
Why? So the Adelsons could ruin the team so that they could move them to Las Vegas and stick them in one of their casinos.
Ah, the Dallas team?
Yeah.
Huh. Move them to Las Vegas. Huh. Okay. Well, sure.
In fact, people were so upset in Dallas that when there were big stories, I think it was Monday, when the tariffs were about to hit.
Oh, okay.
Trade issues dominate news. And I thought, they're really focusing on the.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, wait, they're talking about the Dallas Mavericks trade.
I have made a similar mistake. Sometimes you can't quite tell what's going on. I saw, I think, another Justin Wolfers video out there about the tariffs, and he was being interviewed, and somebody said, I guess the question to them was, how I don't know that. Well, how they ask the question? How can we avoid these damaging trade wars? And his answer was, well, he's Australian. He actually says, mate. He's talking to the news anchor. Mate, the best way to avoid one of these trade wars is to wake up and do nothing. And he explained what he meant was, just don't threaten people with tariffs. They're dumb and they don't do what they say they're going to do. Don't get into it, and then you won't have a trade war. But I thought that he was giving advice to Justin Trudeau and Claudia Sheinbaum. Wake up and do nothing. Trump will change his mind in the morning and there won't be a tariff. Or you'll offer him something you've already been doing for 10 years and he'll say, all right, great, we made a deal. And then, yes, but I misunderstood that. But apparently it's good advice for everybody.
So if I said to you, what's significant about the year 1776?
Nothing.
What would you say?
I would say it was the 200th pre-anniversary of the Montreal Olympics. But there's another one.
Yeah, something else happened.
Right. People tattooed it on their arms and tweeted it on January 6th. I know that.
Yeah. Well, 1776 was the publication of the first of 6 volumes of History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire.
Oh.
By Edward
That's what I was
Gibbon.
thinking of. You're right.
So I don't know why that wasn't your first choice. But in any case, David Frum writes, we've reached the chapter in Gibbon where the mad emperor is appointing magicians, acrobats, and paid agents of the Persians to the highest offices of state. And he's not wrong.
Yeah. That's true. With Hegseth and Bondi and Rafalka Romney probably in the government somewhere. This could be the case. Yeah, that's about where we are, and people are noting it and wondering if this is what it was like to live through that. We have no idea. Well, we just look back and say, well, I don't know. The Roman Empire is definitely gone, and this was the history of it. But what was it like when they were saying, are we done? Is this it? Should I take the bumper sticker off of my chariot? What is this? Where are we? Who are these Goths? How did they get here?
Right. So, again, we talked about the New York Times. Here's the Washington Post and their website. Top story, U.S. allies reject Trump proposal to take over Gaza and displace Palestinians.
Okay.
Trump's proposals are illegal under international law. Well, how many divisions does the Pope have? Trump's call to develop Gaza under U.S. control likely to inflame region, you think?
Yeah.
And then the second story, not the first story. The second story is Republicans quiet as Trump and Musk take axe to federal agencies.
Shh. An axe is being
U.S.
made.
government's officials privately warn Musk splits appears illegal.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do about it?
Privately warn him.
It's Saturday. I'm not going to do anything until Monday.
I guess. Yeah, I did see that one circulating yesterday, and people said, why are you privately advising that? Why don't you publicly say that? And the answer, apparently, by the way, the other big story that's sort of percolating just beneath the surface is whether or not the alignment of congressional Republicans behind every one of these Musk initiatives really is it still political threats against them to primary them, or is it expanding into nice family you got there?
No, it's the nice family stuff.
Yeah, it's. That's the talk of Washington, is that people are finding out, even if it's not a direct threat from the man himself. Certainly, the case is that everybody who's being pressured in these things is finding threatening emails, phone calls, etc. Whether you're a Republican member of Congress, you better not get in the way of Elon Musk, or else. And who knows where those are coming from. But also, even there are people mass spamming government employees who have until apparently, if you believe the buyout thing, which you shouldn't, have until tomorrow to decide their entire future. But they're getting emails from randos from who knows where. They say they're Americans, but maybe they're not, saying retire, or, we'll find out where you live and retire you forcibly. And, on top of the trauma of being told your career is over, you may have no income for your family come Thursday. Make your decision right now based on I don't know who's saying I don't know what with I don't know what authority. and it may all, they may pull the rug out from under you. On top of that, they're being physically threatened. Terrific. I feel for you. So, if you got the time and you're in the place or there's a federal building around you, maybe you want to put yourself there at some point.
So I just would point out for the record as I leave and walk out the door that I didn't realize Bill Cassidy is up for re-election this cycle, which totally explains his vote on RFK.
Ah, okay. Yeah, he's caved. The doctor.
Because Republicans are cowards, period.
Yeah. Well, everybody caved on everything. Susan Collins caved on Tulsi Gabbard, and Cassidy, the doctor, caved on RFK Jr. He'll be good for your health.
Well, that's just in committee. We'll see what happens on the floor. True. There are people who say, we'll let it get to the floor. They have a right to go to the floor.
No. That's where it's
RFK,
worse.
Not RFK. Hegseth was 5150.
Yeah. He certainly was.
And was not really clear until the last minute what was going to happen. So let's see what happens.
Okay. By the way, speaking of Pete Hegseth, and the United States is going to own Gaza. I was thinking his Crusader tattoos make a lot more sense now.
Yes.
All of a sudden.
Well, they're going to send him. He's the first one.
I guess so. All right. Well, right. Yeah. If there's
follow the leader.
Yeah. If you find a body in a coat with a U.S. flag coat liner, that was Hegseth. You don't need his dental records.
Right. And if it's holding a grail, don't drink from it.
He'll have chosen poorly, movie. I swear. Yeah. If he's dead and holding a grail, you definitely don't want that one.
He chose poorly.
Oh, my God. It's like
you want the guy who's living who's drinking.
I can see Pete Hegseth
this is like, this is like common sense 101 here.
But look at that beautiful. He probably drank wrong. Give me that cup. I know how to drink. Damn it. Well, Hegseth, yes.
That was the one flaw in the movie,
Right. Hegseth is there with one of those helmets they had. I don't know. They still make those things. Popular in the 80s and 90s. The baseball batting helmet with two beer cup holders on them. Yeah. He's got fake false grails in both of them and just chugging.
It's a Trumpy thing, right? I'm picking the gold-plated one, not the
of course
one over here.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, this is the cup of a carpenter, and I fired that carpenter, and I didn't pay him. Give me the gold one. Well, okay. Well, I think I don't know. We'll say we're caught up because you got to go. So. We'll fake it for a little while.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, very good. We'll get another chance to, I guess invade somebody else.
Yeah.
Look, it'll be something. Thanks, Greg.
Again, don't watch what he says. Watch what he does.
Watch it. He's about to do something just now.
Yep.
All right.
Alrighty.
Cool. Thank you.
And Lex Luthor, you got nothing to worry about.
Yeah, that's right.
This guy is actually going to overtake you for beachfront property. Take care.
Okay.
And I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. We'll see you then. And one of the things I noticed, by the way, in the picture that he sent me of the front, what is it? I guess sort of the front web page of the Washington Post, the one that he marked should be top story when he's pointing at the Trump brazenly defies laws. The next story underneath that was almost all USAID agency employees to be put on leave. And we got stuff to read about that or stuff to update. And then the third one, which I guess maybe is probably the only one we have time for, but we'll see if we can squeeze some things in. The next stage down, breaking. In the breaking news section is U.S. Postal Service reverses decision to halt parcel services from China. This is yet another tariff reversal story. Basically, you recall, of course, we're going to have huge, but great beneficial tariffs on 25% on Canada and Mexico and Carolina Wrens as well, as you can hear in the background. Yeah. Anyway, and those things, of course, were reversed. We discussed yesterday the fact that the supposed concessions from the two countries aren't even concessions. They might even be reversals of current policy in the opposite direction that Trump thinks he's getting. We discussed all of that, but that 10% tariffs were going to remain on China. And so the first enforcement action on that was they said, there's a lot of shipments of goods, a lot of parcel shipments to individuals, People are ordering things from God knows where. Anywhere you order from online, it's likely to be getting shipped from China. And we have this sort of, as I'm learning about it on the fly, de minimis exceptions to tariffs and duties on imports, things like that. If you buy something from Amazon and it ships from a company in China, or if you're crazy enough to buy things from Temu or whatever, or Alibaba or what have you, all the other competitor sites, and they're shipped from China, you don't have to pay any additional import duties on the stuff because it's a de minimis shipment. And a lot of that is being exploited at various levels. But at any rate, the first implementation of the 10% tariff on China was, we're going back to, if you get a package from China, you're importing something from China, you owe a 10% tariff on it now. And everybody, MAGA America and everybody else said, what? I thought that this doesn't make any sense. You told me that China was going to pay these. And everybody, of course, said, no, that's not the way tariffs work. If you want the package, you're going to have to pay the fee. And they did not like that. A leopard ate their face or ate their shipment from China. And what do you know? A day later, U.S. Postal Service's reverse decision to halt parcel services from China. They were halting them until they could figure out what the hell is going on and how they were going to collect the 10% from all of the good MAGA folk out there who needed $1.97 Crocs knockoffs shipped directly to their house. So that's, I guess, of some interest. And then, of course, there was the other story that we skipped right over, and we can talk about it on our way out for the second break. Almost all USAID agencies employees to be put on leave. That refers, of course, to USAID, which they didn't capitalize as an acronym for whatever reason, but it's true. The word aid, obviously, describes what they do as well, what it makes it a clever acronym. But yes, there are thousands of USAID employees dispersed through hundreds of countries around the world doing that work on the ground, and apparently, they have lives. They're working like diplomats there. They live there, their kids are in school there, their spouses have jobs, they have cars, and they said, back to DC by Thursday because you're all fired. And guess what happens if you don't come back? All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So I was left by saying, yes, now they're threatening to, they basically shut down, they claim, Elon Musk claims to have shut down the entirety of USAID now. And you might wonder why they're even doing this. And there's some information out there circulating about that now that helps us perhaps put some context to it. But I was saying that all the overseas personnel apparently got word via email, which may or may not have come from USAID at all, or may or may not have come from OPM or any of the places that they claimed that it came from, saying you've got to be back in DC, or at least back in the United States. You got to leave the country you're living in by the end of the week. And in the initial stories posted to social media about it, the claim was that if you linger, and try to continue your work there instead in defiance of this order, we will send the military to round you up and forcibly evacuate you, which is an amazing claim because, one, there's no way that they have the resources to do this, just militarily, And two, well, that would be an extraordinary use of the military, don't you think? Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Well, a formal report on it was offered up here by CBS News, and if it doesn't touch on the things that I said I was seeing yesterday, I will find you those Blue Sky posts that make the claim, because I'm pretty sure I reposted them yesterday. USAID to put nearly all staff on leave Friday. Overseas missions shuttering. Now, in addition to the impact of closing these programs that are, in many cases, literally life-saving programs, or at the very least, great ways of projecting soft power from the U.S. around the world, there's a million reasons why you want an operation like USAID continuing. But At any rate, leaving those aside, Sarah Cook and Caitlin Yilek, Yilek, for CBS News report the story. USAID to put nearly all staff on leave Friday. Overseas missions shuttering. And here's the deal. Nearly all staff for the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, will be placed on leave Friday night. The agency announced on its website Tuesday night. Earlier in the day, all overseas missions for USAID had been ordered to shut down, and all staff recalled by Friday, multiple sources confirmed to CBS News. The statement notes that all, quote, direct hire personnel will be placed on leave, with exceptions for those on mission-critical functions, core leadership, and specially designated programs. Those considered exceptions will be notified by USAID leadership by 3 p.m. Thursday, and further guidance on how to request an exception will be forthcoming, the email said. So I'm sure they're pointing at this and saying, see, we're exempting some people and we'll give you instructions. But remember that the instruction is you got to be out of there and back home Friday, unless you're exempt. And how do you know if you're exempt? Well, we'll tell you at 3 p.m. on Thursday. So what do you bet on in this situation, right? What's the practical outcome of this? Well, we're probably going to be exempt, but I guess you better plan for evacuation just in case. The statement notes the agency is developing a plan with the State Department to arrange and pay for return travel within 30 days for USAID personnel posted outside the U.S. But does that help you travel within 30 days if you're to be recalled by Friday? I don't think so. The email states, and even if the email is real, we don't know if it's genuine or not, but it states PSC, or Personal Service Contractor contracts, PSC contracts, and ISC, Independent Service Contracts, that are determined to be inessential will be terminated. Who determines it? I don't know. When? I don't know. Just figure it out. Maybe we'll fly you back in 30 days, even though apparently you're in trouble and the military is going to be after you on Saturday. It also says they will consider case-by-case exemptions and return travel extensions based on personal or family hardship, mobility, or safety concerns. And that's another interesting thing. A lot of times you are working in less than friendly territory. The whole point in some cases being let's win, hearts and minds here in a place where the United States is maybe not, as they used to say on Capitol Hill, held in minimal high regard. And yeah, you should probably, I was just thinking the other day about, yesterday that was, about how much the press seemed intent on hating on Joe Biden for withdrawing from Afghanistan, and the excuse was, it's a messy withdrawal, and people got all confused, and people got killed in the confusion. People are going to be snatched and maybe killed. Like if the whole USAID thing goes down by Friday and your security is gone and your mission is over and the United States government no longer considers you a legitimate employee of the government, and basically all the protections are gone and all the reasons for local malfeasors not to snatch you and hold you as a hostage are gone, then somebody's getting beat up, killed, snatched as a hostage, and we're going to have an Afghanistan situation on our hands. But the United States media will, somehow wash their hands of that one. This one doesn't involve cool stuff and military tactical gear and people, that's what I had. I mentioned that yesterday. Somebody pointed out, and was it Matthew Rigdon maybe, or somebody else pointing out, the media won't care about this one because it's not tactical enough for them to think it's a big deal. And they might even be right about that. Anyway, holy cow, that would be very difficult. And remember, again, so aside from the safety issues, your family's there, your kids are in possibly, the international school there, and it's just maybe the beginning of the second semester and all the worries that go with that. And I own a house here, or I'm renting an apartment. Maybe you can give that up. I got furniture here to move. I got cars I got to sell. I got to pack up my whole life in a week. and it might not even be necessary. I might find out 3 p.m. Thursday the whole thing was for nothing. Anyway, where were we with this? On Tuesday night, multiple USAID staffers based on the agency's capital headquarters informed CBS News that they had received a separate email notifying them that they had been placed on paid administrative leave. So everybody overseas that already has it that much harder trying to get out of town is fired. And the people who at least they live here, well, you're on paid administrative leave. But by the way, the protests outside of the various buildings, including the USAID building, I'm sure they'll clear up real soon. They won't, I'm sure it'll all be better once thousands of people who have been uprooted from their lives overseas and unceremoniously dumped onto the streets of D.C., ordered back there by the Musk administration, and those who are local and on paid administrative leave and have very little to do, lots of time on their hands and not much work that they're allowed to get done. Well, I'm sure they'll avoid the protests and go just have nice coffees with one another and lament their circumstances. I don't know. We'll see. They're building a bonus army. Sources told CBS News that it was believed that the letters had gone out to a vast majority of the headquarters employees. A copy of the memo provided to CBS News notes that employees must remain, quote, available by telephone and email during business hours, but are prohibited from entering USAID buildings. However, if you have a fashy haircut and you feel like saying you work for Elon, I guess they'll let you in. That too, I told you that there was such a comment out there made, and I found it. And it was related to the Guardians reporting that the Musk troops are now on the ground at other agencies, including the NOAA headquarters, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Is that, I don't know if I remember exactly what the wording is, but in other words, the weather folks, as we know them, but it's so much more than just that, of course, Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And they've pushed their way in. And the quote here was, the reason I'll bring it up, was they apparently just sort of walked past security and said, get out of my way. And they're looking for access for the IT systems, as they have in other agencies, said former NOAA official. They will have access to the entire computer system, a lot of which is confidential information. That's the grab quote from the Guardian piece. And as the Blue Sky commenter here, radiodeadair.com. How do you like that? Nash at radiodeadair.com said, in theory, right now all you need is a suit, a lanyard, and an attitude, and you can just claim you work for Elon. You could access any government facility in D.C., and maybe elsewhere, and maybe a missile silo. You could try that out. But pretty interesting. Just file that one next to, I thought if you stormed the Capitol, if you just tried to push your way into the Capitol, that they would arrest you, shoot you, something, right? But apparently not. I thought that if you walked into a government office and security stopped you, like they did yesterday with the Democrats in Congress, who actually went to USAID and other agencies and said, let us in, and Treasury building, let us in. We want to see what's happening. We are responsible for oversight of this agency. Let us in. And security said no. What they should have tried was, what's the quote? Get out of my way. Yes, they should have tried that one. Apparently, again, if you're a kid and you got a fashy haircut and you say, walk past them and say, get out of my way, that'll work. I found that kind of astonishing. Why hasn't anybody thought to do this? All right. Well, where were we here? I was kind of distracted by that, but there we go. Okay. Prohibited from entering USAID buildings, but they haven't yet tried saying get out of my way, I don't think. Meanwhile, the newly appointed deputy administrator for the agency. Oh, and if you're looking for a way to pull this off, I understand if this stuff is not for you, you're not going to get a physical confrontation with a security guard, or you don't think that they'll believe you. Bring your kids. It'll be a national bring your kids to work day. And tell your kids to put on the lanyard, put a jacket on them, and tell them to tell security, get out of my way, and then just follow them in, if that works. All right. Meanwhile, the newly appointed deputy administrator for the agency, Pete Marocco, I don't know if that's pronounced that way, but it's spelled like Morocco, but with an A instead of the first O. met with State Department leadership on Tuesday and instructed them to get every USAID employee out of their respective countries worldwide by Friday. According to two sources familiar with the matter, Morocco said that if the State Department did not, then the staff would be evacuated by the U.S. military, sources said. So it's right there, and I knew that I had seen that somewhere. CBS News has got that in their actual report. By the way, Pete Morocco, if I remember correctly, I also happened to see him mentioned yesterday. And the odd thing about that guy, I'm going to Google him and make sure I've got the right guy here. Yeah. So he's the new head of the USAID, I guess. There was a few moments there while Marco Rubio said he was the acting director of USAID in place of whoever they kicked out. And now they've got a new guy in place, Pete Morocco. There's another story about that guy. And the story about that guy is he was a January 6th guy. He was inside the Capitol on January 6th. He stormed the Capitol with the mob outside, and now he's the head of USAID. And he says, I'm going to send the military to scoop you guys up if you don't get your asses back here by Friday. You imagine this jackass is now in command of, or imagines himself to be able to command military troops to round up enemies. I thought you were going to get shot when you stormed in there, but, well, he found out the real truth about it. No, you can do whatever you want in the name of MAGA. So, okay, isn't that great? He's the new administrator of USAID. So, and how do you like that? If you don't get your ass out of there by Friday, the military is going to come get you. USAID has more than 10,000 employees, by the way, with about 2/3 working overseas. So that's a military need to be responsible for scooping up 6,000 individuals and their families from how many? 60 countries. I'm sorry. I guess the agency is maintaining a presence in at least 60 countries, even though humanitarian aid goes to more than 100 such countries. USAID has 10,000 employees, as we mentioned. Some 1,400 work in the agency's D.C. headquarters. The agency maintains more than 60 country and regional missions. The agency provides humanitarian aid to more than 100 countries, including disaster relief, health and medical aid, and emergency food programs. Furthermore, all D.C. area USAID buildings in the capital's northern region remain closed this week. According to an email shared with CBS News by multiple USAID staffers and contractors, the closures for USAID buildings in Washington, D.C. have been expanded to include both facilities in both Springfield, Virginia, and Leesburg, Virginia. That's out my way. The Trump administration has targeted USAID as the president and his allies, including billionaire Elon Musk, there he is, the head of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, or somebody just suggested to me that maybe you want to pronounce that as Dodgy, because that sort of works. Seeks to cut the size of the federal government. It doesn't really. How much more of this is there before? Did they also give them a shot to see whether they can explain the interest in targeting USAID for this? Because remember, we just said, well, they do humanitarian aid, food programs, medical aid, disaster relief. Why make them the first agency to be destroyed out of all of them? And there are some rumors circulating. We'll see whether they get cited in here. If not, we'll try to circle back and figure those out for you. The future of the agency, which was established in 1961 to combat poverty, strengthen democracy, and protect human rights and global health, is now uncertain. And of course, global health, you mean like COVID, like instead of using hydroxychloroquine? Maybe that's one thing. Strengthen democracy, they definitely don't want that. Why, Mencius Moldbug says it's yucky, so I can't do that. Musk has said the agency should be shut down, arguing that it's beyond repair. When asked Tuesday whether he would wind down USAID, Trump told supporters, it sounds like it. Doesn't it sound like it? I don't know what's happening. I don't know. Elon says do it, so I'm doing it. The president also praised Musk for scrutinizing the agency Look at all the fraud he's found. Oh my God. Look at all the fraud he's found, Mr. Trump said, adding that funding has gone to, quote, all sorts of groups that shouldn't deserve to get any money. Big points off here if CBS doesn't tell you what his favorite example is here. And it looks like they don't. Mind you, this is the one that Trump told reporters just, I don't know, yesterday, the day before. Well, USAID, well, they looked at things. Just look at the things, the fraud that he's found, that Musk has found. Did you know? Think of it. Did he say million? $100 million. $100 million spent on condoms for Hamas. Which, of course, no. Abby Phillips pointed that out and pointed out that he keeps upping the number. He said 50 million. Now he says 100 million. And the truth is it's zero. Not just 0 million, but 0 in condoms for Hamas or condoms in Gaza at all. But there's an explanation for how a dummy might land on something like that. We'll see if we can get to that a little bit later on. But let's see. Dr. Atul Gawande, former USAID Global Health Director, told CBS News the move to target the agency is dangerous for the country. What we're talking about are disaster relief workers. We're talking about health workers and people who are doing good and protecting America around the world, Gawande said. You're talking about 20 million people in the global HIV program that has reduced HIV around the world. They are going without medication that keeps them alive. You're talking about disease outbreaks that are not being stopped, like bird flu, where monitoring has been turned off in 49 countries. And again, that's always the explanation, but they never really grasp it. If you're not stopping disease over there, you're going to have it over here, right? We're fighting them over there so we don't have to fight them over here. We're treating disease over there so that we won't have to treat it here. But to hell with that, because you should stick a light bulb up your ass and inject bleach. In fiscal year 2023, USAID managed more than $40 billion in appropriations, the Congressional Research Service said, an amount that is less than 1% of the overall federal budget. But like we said, that is a technocratic answer to a friend-enemy question. Why are you spending anything, is their question. Most of that funding went to governance programs intending to help develop and strengthen democratic governance, which these guys hate, followed by humanitarian and health programs, according to the report. The countries that received the most money in fiscal year 2023 were Ukraine. That's a big problem for them. Ethiopia and Jordan. Oh, but now we want Jordan to take 1 million refugees from Gaza. But I'm sure they won't do it because they've never done it. But now we'll say, well, if you want your USAID money, then you'll take the refugees. But I thought you were turning that off. Well, I'll turn it back on again. Staff recalls also include the agency's foreign service officers who spend years abroad, often with their families. They'll have to figure out logistics for their children who are in school, housing, move their belongings, and where they'll move to in the U.S. Yeah, so pretty bad. Now, why the targeting of USAID? Okay, well, there's a couple of directions that we would have to go in order to try to explain that. We'll do this, though. Long story short, on the rumor side of it is that, and I've definitely seen some tweets and such that we need for explaining those reasons. But USAID, when they say they spend money on governance programs and democracy, bolstering democracy abroad, one of the things that they do and have done is pay for programs like pro-democracy programs. What we're talking about, stuff like teaching local populations or teaching governmental officials in other countries how to deal with malicious disinformation over the internet. You know, we've had some small problems with that internationally. And Elon Musk regards that as censorship of his precious Twitter or the like, right? And look, the reality is international bad actors are using Twitter to spread misinformation everywhere. And here's how to teach people how to read it critically and learn to recognize it and not fall for it. And that bothers Elon Musk enough that he's going to just blow up the major source of U.S. soft power abroad in order to get at it. So that's a big thing. There's others who have said, USAID was also instrumental in supporting pro-democratic movement in South Africa that helped undermine and finally topple the old apartheid regime there, and that may bother them. I'm sure that it upsets them to no end that there might be aid for Palestinians involved as well, and of course the Ukraine issue also disturbs them. But they basically are saying, well, we don't want people to get aid in countries that we don't like. We don't want people we don't like to receive aid, and we certainly wouldn't put it past Elon Musk to be mad about directly about teaching people how to recognize disinformation, especially when it's delivered to you by paying customers on Twitter. So there's that to look out for. In addition, there's the crazy issue of, as Trump keeps pointing out, and really, honestly, it's really frustrating that he's not called out on stuff like this. When he then makes assertions about other things, moves on to the next stupid issue, why people aren't saying, you're making this claim and this is the reason why you say you're going to implement this policy, but you're out of your mind. I mean, just yesterday you told us that there was $100 million in condoms for Hamas, and that's like from out of left field. You're crazy. You think there's litter boxes in schools. Like, you're not a well man. I don't know why we should listen to your allegations about this next garbage that you're claiming to move on to. So what is happening here? I don't know whether it's better to give you the long story short version or to kind of read you the story. But I've had, let's see, I think I've got two pieces on it here. And one is, let's see, can I find this one? Is this one of the did I put away a blue sky thing on this? No, that's not this one. All right. Well, at any rate, I think I may have just, reposted, whatever the hell we're calling it, over at Blue Sky, the first one. But I have a story from Semaphore done by, it might be even, is it Dave Weigel's own work here? It is. The mystery of the $50 million, quote, condoms for Hamas. This is a new one. You'll learn something new on this. Here we go. President Trump claimed this week to have canceled $50 million, and then he upped it to $100 million, right? And condoms for the residents of Gaza. Of course, by the time he boosted it to $100 million, it was just for Hamas. It could have been a memorable example of how the new administration was scouring the government for wasteful spending, but the group that lost that funding said that it had spent none of it on family planning, much less for Hamas, I'm sure. The $50 million figure originated with White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who told reporters at her first briefing on Tuesday, so a great lie right off the bat, that DOGE and the Office of Management and Budget had stopped, quote, 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. On Wednesday, the president said before signing the Lake and Riley Act that the administration had, quote, identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. Little embellishment there. Asked about the grant by Semaphore, a spokesperson for the State Department said the reference was to two $50 million buckets of aid for Gaza via the International Medical Corp. Or I don't know if that's Corp or Corps. There's no S on it, so I don't know. Which offered family planning programming. In response, a spokesperson for the IMC said that it had received $68,078,508 from USAID for work in Gaza, but no U.S. government funding was used to procure or distribute condoms. If the stoppage continued, it would cease its work in Gaza within a week. Andrew Miller, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Israeli-Palestinian Affairs in the Biden administration, told Semaphore that Trump and Leavitt's claims don't add up for its own family planning funding abroad, $60 million last year, none of it in Gaza. USAID purchases condoms at a 5-cent unit rate, meaning that a $50 million grant would buy 1 billion of them. I think that might be overstating the case. After reporting in 2018 about Hamas fighters using latex condoms, you ready for this one, to float explosives into Israel? I don't know, man. That's what they're saying. The Jewish state barred condoms from being sent to Palestinian territories, although I gotta believe that they're not terribly interested in the condoms there. The numbers are so exaggerated and so ridiculous that there are only two explanations, Miller said. One is that they're fabricating this, which is possible, and the second is that there's some sort of reproductive health cost, but most of that would be treating women in a war zone, not contraceptives. Well, it gets worse than that, if you can believe it. Hang on for more. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So let's continue on reading through Dave Weigel's piece here. He's adding some other perspectives to all this, including his own view of what's happening here. I am not about to become Semaphore's fact-check columnist. Other people do that for other quality news organizations. They have lots of time and probably lots of targets. The mystery of the $50 million condoms stuck out to me amid all the stories growing from this week's OMB funding freeze memo because it was so quickly believed even before the White House pointed to some evidence to back it up. They pointed to the wrong stuff, of course. David Friedman, Trump's first ambassador to Israel, reacted to the Levitt statement by calculating how many condoms might have been in the purchase and suggesting that Hamas wanted to fill them with helium to carry bombs over the border. And then Trump did repeat that. You know what they're doing? Can you believe it? They're using them to make bombs. I was wondering about how they would possibly do that. Chris Rufo, the scholar, he says here, an activist whose anti-DEI work, it was really actually anti-CRT work, but he transformed it into DEI when the CRT thing fizzled, has been enormously influential in the new administration and cited it as an example of why, quote, permanent bureaucrats should be replaced by private sector whiz kids. It was an early test of something new and helpful to Trump, new media outlets that will share whatever the administration says. Autism Capital, a popular X account often reshared by Elon Musk, I don't know why they call it that, printed Levitt's remark as fact unearthed by Dodgy, we'll now call it. I like that suggestion. Tip of the iceberg, added Musk. When Fox News covered the claim, it cited an X post from new State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce, oh my God, about stopping $102 million, $102 million now, in unjustified funding to a contractor in Gaza, including money for contraception. Natural next question, what contractor? That wasn't answered in that story for some reason. When the State Department did name a contractor after other reporters' questions, IMC said the claim was wrong. And there's really no evidence that this backfired on the administration. Its premise that as much funding should be halted as possible until the new team can determine whether it meets Trump's goals is totally uncontroversial among Republicans. But was this the best way to sell it? There is a healthy industry in D.C. of finding the craziest sounding federal spending, highlighting it, and asking why taxpayers should be funding it. One very valid source of media skepticism is that stories can go viral before the details get confirmed. Narrative before facts, as City Journal put it in a fair recap of how early reporting and Joe Biden botched the Jacob Blake story, inflaming racial tensions in Kenosha, Wisconsin before the 2020 election. The View from Democrats then offered here. Few of them commented on a $50 million claim, but Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy hit back at the White House after a reporter repeated Trump's claim without pushback. It's a lie, made up. There was no U.S. funding for condoms in Gaza, he wrote on X. What he stopped are programs to keep malnourished babies alive in Gaza. Aid groups say infants will start to die next week. Well, that may not be what they stopped either. This doesn't really get at what I think may be an alternative explanation, which I've seen on Blue Sky, which the explanation is this. Apparently, there were significant programs ongoing for HIV prevention supplies in Gaza. But as it turns out, Gaza is the name of a province in the African country of Mozambique, which is where the $83 million were actually being spent. The fact that it's called Gaza was certainly confusing, and I can almost forgive people that confusion because I never heard of Gaza province of Mozambique either. But that's what they're going on. They basically searched Gaza in the database and said, what's going on there? Why should we be doing any of it? Oh, my God, it's contraception or birth control or HIV prevention. And I bet that's condoms, and we can make fun of it that way. Condoms for Hamas. No, not even in the country, not even anywhere near them. But there they go. So, but they had to come up with a story of, well, why would there be condoms going to Hamas at all anyway? And then they said, well, you know what? What if we hallucinate that they're filling them with helium? Because there's lots of helium tanks just, basically being delivered by Amazon right to Gaza, right? Can't have any food, but helium tanks they've got. And we'll blow up the condoms into balloons. And I don't really even know if that works. But can you fill them with enough helium to float a bomb into Israel from Gaza? Now, I guess there are people who have said this before, and that's all they got going for. Well, they did it in 2009, maybe not. I don't know. That sounds like an awfully stupid claim, and I don't know how much explosive can you float in a condom balloon. I don't know if that's really a thing. And anyway, I mean, I'm sure they were innovative enough to try to come up with something like that, but. Yeah, the idea that we spent $100 million on it and all they're doing with them is making bombs. Well, none of them went to them. And even if they did, it's an awfully far-fetched thing. I think you might have hallucinated this whole thing. Like to make the mistake of one Gaza for another. Okay, fine. To make the mistake of, and they're using the condoms as balloons to floating bombs into, oh, come on, please, people. This is ridiculous. And you can't just print this. What are you talking about? Anyway, I just found that rather remarkable, too. And we learned something new about the geography of Mozambique as well. Or the political geography, anyway. I don't know. I found that rather interesting, to say the least. Now, we should probably at this point, we should move back to the story of, or try and find the stories about why, with some printed evidence of why people think Elon Musk might be so interested in targeting USAID. But there are a number of other stories that we really have to get to, and we might as well try and do it. I mentioned to you that The new claim from the White House was that Elon Musk is a special government employee. And he's probably not. One, there's no paperwork on it that anybody's been shown. And two, it was the idea that Trump would miss the opportunity to sign something with Elon Musk's appointment in it and show it to the press is really just too difficult to swallow. But Greg Sargent has been working on this as well, and has I think he produced a recent podcast episode in which he discusses this with Andy Craig. Do we know Andy Craig? I don't know. Offhand, look at this. There's one of the new problematic features here with the way Blue Sky Deck works is I'm having difficulty. There's some people who have protected their posts such that you can only see them when you're signed in, and for some reason the system doesn't think I'm signed in, even though I am, and I'm watching things on Blue Sky's deck all the time, and I wouldn't be able to use the system if I wasn't. But anyway, apparently I'm not. So anyway, I was going to find out who Andy Craig is by clicking on his profile here, but we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. Oh, all right. And see if we can read Greg Sargent's discussion of it. Why is this? Boy, there's something going on with my touchpad as well, and just making things even more complicated for all of us. But Greg Sargent was posting earlier. In this exchange, he says, Andy Craig does a nice job in explaining just how lawless Elon Musk's autocratic power grab has truly become. Read these 4 screen caps, or of course you could look at you can listen to the podcast or read the transcript of the podcast, to which he provides a link, but we'll just take his word for it on these highlights. And he begins by playing some audio from Jamie Raskin, who says, Elon Musk, you may have illegally seized power over the financial payment systems of the United States Department of Treasury, and that's pretty bad. But you don't control the money of the American people, except that's actually what it means. The U.S. Congress does that under Article 1 of the Constitution, and just like the president who is elected to something cannot impound the money of the people, we don't have a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk, and that's going to become real clear. We hope so. Greg begins the podcast by saying, Andy, that's basically the size of it. Wouldn't you say Raskin nails it there? And Andy says, yeah. And Jamie Raskin himself is a constitutional law expert. He's one of the ones that very much gets this stuff the best on Capitol Hill, and he's worth paying attention to. The fact that Musk is directly exercising apparent control and authority over executive branch departments is the key thing. Elon Musk was not elected president. Of course, ask Stephen Miller about that. He was not appointed to any office that has any legal powers. The Department of Government Efficiency was this thing they spun up out of rebranding the IT advisory service within the executive office of the president. And of course, this is so wildly far beyond what role he was intended to have. It's to the point where we've seen confrontations about this, like actual physical confrontations at these agencies and departments. He sends kids. In many cases, these are 19, 20, 21-year-old kids claiming they have authority to access all these things, to take over these computer networks, and they shut people out of them and tell people to go home. They should be refusing. If Donald Trump wants to come in through regular channels and exercise his constitutional executive authority, that's something he can do, but Elon Musk is not that. He is not in anybody's chain of command. Sargent says, certainly not, although Trump seems to be saying, I've got control over him. He uses Greg's favorite phrase.
That's bullshit.
Musk himself was really ticked off by that Raskin riff. On Twitter, Musk offered this convoluted theory that Raskin is actually taking in U.S. foreign aid money via kickbacks and bribes from U.S. lobbying firms. It's nutty stuff, Sargent says. Sorry, Greg Sargent is more freewheeling in his podcast than we are. Gosh, we got to catch up with the times. Raskin pointed out right away that this is nonsense. Then Raskin said, as a special government employee, which is what they're claiming for him, Musk's financial reports should be public too. Raskin pointed out that Musk's companies enjoy enormously lucrative federal government contracts. Again, to go back to what you said earlier, it's not clear what's required of Musk, but this is a good takedown from Raskin, right? If Musk is so interested in public servants not getting bribed, then shouldn't he want to meet basic disclosure norms? That's his whole shtick. It's all about cleaner government. But as it turns out, he's a huge hypocrite, I guess. So that's just not going to work on him. But yeah, special government employees do, for the most part, have to make financial disclosures about potential conflicts of interest. And there are huge ones for Musk. And of course, he's not going to do any of that. But just, by the same token, when are we going to see Trump's taxes? Not even in the nobody's even talking about that one, by the way. Has the audit ended? There's a question for you, right? He's shutting down entire government agencies, defying the law left and right. And he can't make the IRS stop this audit so that he can disclose his taxes. Not that I'd believe him if I saw him, but there you go. There's another great example. So Andy Craig answers him, absolutely. Through SpaceX and some other of his concerns, but primarily SpaceX, Musk rakes in hundreds of millions of dollars in federal government contracts. And that is the kind of thing where you would normally try to maintain a pretty clear wall of separation. If he's going to be coming in and advising some things, he has to disclose what his conflicts are, and he has to, quote unquote, I would say, has to avoid anything to do with them. And there's no indication that's happening. And in fact, Raskin is right to highlight this fact that he has not even filed the disclosure. As far as we know, he hasn't even received the waiver, which is an option that's possible in some cases. You can have a waiver when it's well justified and all the rest of it, but you got to at least go through the process. It's hard to imagine anybody on earth probably who would have more conflicts of interest in rooting around in the fiscal payment system of the federal government and acting with apparent authority to issue, as if they were from the president, orders to the entire government. Greg says, just to be clear on what you're saying here, a waiver is something that could be granted that would let him shape agencies that could potentially take actions that affect his financial interests via those government contracts. The Times reports that the White House isn't saying if Musk has been granted this waiver. And the Times also quotes ethics lawyers saying that it's hard to see how such a thing, a waiver like this, could be structured even if he had one, to cover Musk, given how much he's doing right now inside the federal government. Raskin pointed this out as well, challenging him to say if he's been given such a conflict of interest waiver. Bottom line, Andy, it seems to me, is we just don't know how Musk's activities are impacting his bottom line. And we don't know if he's got a conflict of interest waiver or not, do we? Do we know any of this? Trump and paperwork, man, I'm telling you. Okay? Craig, of course, answers, no, there's been a total lack of transparency. We went on nearly 2 weeks before even hearing that he's a special government employee stuff. Yeah, they didn't hit upon that excuse until later on. Greg later then posts on Blue Sky one other crucial point. The White House now says Elon Musk is a special government employee, but this category, like if you actually look up what it is and what's it for, this category is plainly for people who are part-time or have something much more like an outside consultancy role. Musk is nothing like this. And yet more from the transcript here, where Greg says the White House has just announced they've designated Musk a special government employee. This is someone who works for the government for somewhat less time than an ordinary employee does and is not required to file a public financial disclosure report, but he is subject to ethics rules and can file a disclosure report if he's going to have a big role in forming agency policy, which it looks like Musk will. Andy, can you walk us through what it means that Musk is designated as a special government employee? And Andy says, yes, sure. This is something that came out after all the pushback about he seems to have no official government status. They came out and said, well, he's a special government employee. SGEs are used for a number of things, but what's relevant for here is they're intended for outside consultants, advisors, people who are not being brought onto the federal payroll but have expertise. And they're very much intended to be a part-time advisory capacity thing. As an SGE, he is not subject to the full mandatory reporting requirements for his financial disclosures and conflicts of interest like other federal employees are, but he is subject to this nebulous situation where if he has a major policy role, then it does become mandatory. And I mean, you can't argue that this isn't a major policy role, right? And exactly What that means and what triggers it, well, it's very fuzzy. Musk has spun up this mega government department where he's barking orders at the entire executive branch as if he's deputy president. That's very much not what an SGE is. Greg says, if I understand this correctly, the essence of this is that an SGE is someone who has not someone who has a whole lot of influence, someone who's in a consulting role, an advisory role, a bit of an outside role. But here we've got Musk very clearly shaping agency policy pretty deeply. He's got his hands on the Treasury Department's payment systems. He says he's shutting down the U.S. Agency for International Development with Trump's assent. He's talking about mass buyouts for federal workers. Is there any way that this is anything all in common with what an SGE is supposed to be? Answer, obviously not at all. In fact, it goes so far as to say that this would be the kind of thing that is well outside even being a regular government employee. This is the kind of thing where you have to be a constitutional officer within the meaning of the Constitution's Appointments Clause. And that doesn't necessarily always require Senate confirmation, but there's a strong argument that he, in fact, falls under the kind of thing that requires mandatory Senate confirmation. At the very least, he is far beyond, we brought in this guy who works at a think tank or some private company, and we're getting his advice on this thing. That is not what's going on here. And calling him an SGE is a big leap of a pretense. And, well, you should know that. And I think they're largely correct about that. So we'll hang on to that little bit of information and head back over to Pocket and see what else we can bring you in the 10 minutes or so that we've got left. And I'm going to have to open up another Pocket. Yeah, this is becoming complex as it gets overstuffed with other stories. Man, okay, we're not going to get a chance to read on the air Charlie Savage's description of things under that great headline, Trump brazenly defies laws and escalating executive power grab. But I think you largely know the story of that. Let's see. What other stories do we want to bring to here? There's some great headlines and some interesting, colorful language in some of these, including, this is from where? BreakingDefense.com. I don't think they meant to break the defense industry, but that's what they're doing. What the F is going on? Confusion and uncertainty in industry as Army contracts seemingly, I guess, evaporate, seemingly halted. Why not add this? I guess for those of you who think, well, they'll put the brakes on it when it gets to stopping money flowing to defense contractors. Will it, though? Again, from BreakingDefense.com by Ashley Roque, Valerie Encina, and Aaron Mehta. Let's get this pop-up out of the way. What the F is going on? Confusion, uncertainty in industry as Army contracts seemingly halted. The fear among industry this is the subheader, is that this move is just the first in what would amount to a Pentagon-wide halt on new awards for an indefinite period of time. Now that sounds pretty serious. Defense contractors being threatened. All right. There's an editor's note here. On January 28th, 2025 at 6:44 p.m. Eastern Time, hours after the publication of this report, the Pentagon released a statement attributed to a senior defense official saying that the Defense Department is reviewing financial assistance-related initiatives as directed by the White House Office of Management and Budget, but the, quote, scope of that directive, quote, does not include contracts. That would tell you what? That it very much does include contracts because you can't believe these guys about anything. Their claim, contrary to certain media accounts, the Department of Defense has not paused contract awards. The official said, while noting it is possible that activities may be paused if they're determined to fall within the bounds of the guidance, whatever that means. The statement does not address a number of issues raised in the report below, specific to U.S. Army contracting. So what's the report say? The defense industry is in a state bordering between confusion and panic following what could be a pause awarding new Army contracts as the service reviews on its plans under the Trump administration. The fear among industry now is that this move is just the first in what would amount to a Pentagon-wide halt on new awards for an indefinite period of time. Word of some sort of freeze on Army contracts began circulating late Friday and by Monday evening was moving quickly through the industry, the Hill, and the Pentagon. Everything's been rearranged now. Where did everything's been rearranged because the ads shifted. There we are. But with a lack of certainty from anyone about what was going on. That includes inside the Army. And why would you want to tell those guys, right? Where as of Tuesday morning, when different officials appeared to have different interpretations of what the guidance meant. In a statement, Army spokesperson Ellen Lovett said, quote, Army contracting activities continue to move forward. As is customary, the Army is currently conducting a review of existing solicitations and awards of contracts to ensure that our programs are aligned with the incoming leadership's policies and directives. Mostly gobbledygook, but just not really confirming or denying anything. However, that clashes with information in a public document and from a well-placed Army source who told Breaking Defense that the service is pausing and reviewing contracting activities and outgoing solicitations. Both, that is. The source couldn't say how long this may last, and it wouldn't be responsible for the service to put up an X-day pause in place, especially if conditions change with new leadership teams in place. Bloomberg reported late Monday that it could last as long as several months. So there you go. We'll just stop at this point and just note for the record that they're experiencing widespread panic in the defense industry. One of those things that you thought they weren't going to touch, I guess. And then, oh man, gosh, there's just so many things to do here. Where will I go next? Oh, first of all, I might have to activate a new Wired subscription in order to read this next one, but there is news here. Federal workers sue to disconnect dodgy, we'll call it, server over at Wired, and if I have it correct, I don't know. I don't want to click through or else I might lose the text here, but federal employees are seeking a temporary restraining order as part of a class action lawsuit accusing a group of Elon Musk's associates of allegedly operating an illegally connected server from the 5th floor of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management's headquarters in Washington, D.C. This is the most serious of their incursions in IT, if you ask me. Just plugging in spoofing servers and claiming not only are they stealing all the data, but claiming to be able to send emails from supposedly official-looking sources that people should follow their orders because they came from an opm.gov address when it's a fake one. An attorney representing two federal workers, Jane Doe's 1 and 2, filed a motion this morning arguing that the server's continued operation not only violates federal law, but it's potentially exposing vast quantities of government staffers' personal information to hostile foreign adversaries through unencrypted email. A copy of the motion filed in the D.C. District Court by the National Security Counselors, a Washington area public interest law firm, was obtained by Wired exclusively in advance. Wired previously reported that Musk had installed several lackeys in OPM's top offices, including individuals with ties to XAI, Neuralink, and other companies that he owns. The initial lawsuit, filed on January 27th, why aren't they doing this? When are they going to? Oh, they did it, and they did it before the weekend. Oh, but you didn't get news until now. I see. Well, sometimes things are happening. Anyway, it cites reports that Musk's associates illegally connected a server to a government network for the purposes of harvesting information, including the names and email accounts of federal employees. The server was installed on the agency's premises, the complaint alleges, without OPM, the government's Human Resources Department, conducting a mandatory privacy impact assessment required under federal law. Oh no, required under federal law. What will we do? Under the 2002 E-Government Act, agencies are required to perform privacy assessments prior to making substantial changes to existing information technology when handling information in identifiable form. Notably, prior to the installation of the server, OPM did not have the technical capability to email the entire federal workforce from a single email account. At some point after January 20th, 2025, OPM allowed unknown individuals to simply bypass its existing systems and security protocols, Tuesday's motion claims, for the stated purpose of being able to communicate directly with those individuals without involving other agencies. In short, the sole purpose of this new system was expediency, or so they claimed anyway. OPM did not immediately respond to a request for comment. If the motion is granted, OPM would be forced to disconnect the server until the assessment is done. As a consequence, the Trump administration's plans to drastically reduce the size of the federal workforce would likely face delays. The email account linked to the server, hr@opm.gov, is currently being used to gather information from federal workers accepting buyouts under the administration's, quote, deferred resignation program, which is set to expire on February 6th. That's tomorrow, of course. Under the law, a temporary restraining order is an extraordinary remedy, notes National Security Council's Executive Director Kel McClanahan, but this is an extraordinary situation. Before issuing a restraining order, courts apply, this is a little law lesson for you, what's known as the balance of equities doctrine. Oh, and that'll be, you can't use the word equity anymore. Balance of equities doctrine, weighing the burdens and costs on both parties. In this case, however, McClanahan argues that the injunction would inflict no hardship on the government whatsoever, and that's likely true. February 6th is an arbitrary deadline, he says, and the administration could simply continue to implement the resignation program through pre-existing channels. We can't wait for the normal course of litigation when all that information is just sitting there in some system nobody knows about with who knows what protections, McClanahan says. In a normal case, we might be able to at least count on the Inspector General to do something, but Trump fired her, so all bets are off. You get the idea? The motion further questions whether OPM violated the Administrative Procedure Act, which prohibits federal agencies from taking actions not in accordance with the law. Under the APA, courts may compel agency action, such as a private assessment, when it is unlawfully withheld. Employees at various agencies were reportedly notified last month to be on the lookout for messages originating from the hr@opm.gov account. McClanahan's complaint points to a January 23rd email from acting Homeland Security Secretary Benjamin Huffman instructing DHS employees that the hr@opm.gov account, quote, can be considered trusted. Really? In the following days, emails were blasted out twice across the executive branch instructing federal workers to reply yes in both cases. The same account was later used to transmit that fork-in-the-road missive, prompting the Trump administration's legally dubious deferred resignation program.
NetworksRadio.com.
You can see this is not really getting good press in Wired.
To Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
All right, well, all the legal problems underlying the program of supposed buyouts remain, of course, but this focuses mostly on the technical espionage that is essentially happening here. But a lawsuit has been filed to stop it, even while we were complaining that nothing was happening. What else might be happening that we don't know about? Justice Putnam takes on that job next. Stay tuned.